17 points, 12 assists, a historic double-double off the bench in a high-stakes international qualifying tournament. And the acting head coach of Team USA went on the record, at the podium, into the microphone in front of the entire press corps, and confirmed that her lineup was the most dynamic, effective unit on the basketball floor. Then he refused to start her. That contradiction is what you have been watching build over 3 consecutive games of this international qualifying tournament. And today, we are connecting every dot that the mainstream coverage keeps dancing around. Because what just happened inside the Team USA program is not simply a lineup debate. It is an institutional suppression strategy that got caught, documented in the coach's own words. If this investigation is already confirming what you suspected, hit that like button right now. It tells us exactly what kind of analysis this community demands, and it keeps this deep coverage coming. For 3 straight games, veteran point guard Chelsea Gray has controlled the starting point guard position. 3 games, 0 starts for Caitlin Clark. The fan frustration has been loud, global, and entirely justified. But it was the acting head coach's post-game press conference that didn't just fail to explain the lineup. It accidentally exposed the entire agenda. Nate Tibbetts was asked directly, what did he think of that second unit performance? The specific lineup featuring Caitlin Clark, Paige Bueckers, and Angel Reese that completely tore the game open. His answer was stunning in what it confirmed. He praised their creativity. He acknowledged their elite shooting. He described a group that stretched the floor, overwhelmed the opposition, and fundamentally transformed the offensive rhythm of the entire contest. And then, in the very next breath, he told the press he probably played them a little bit too long and casually suggested they got a little bit tired. That is the tell. That is the move you have seen at every level of institutional management, when the person coming off the bench outperforms the starter in every measurable category. You do not promote the backup. You invent a flaw. You manufacture a limitation. You plant a seed of doubt in the public narrative so the existing hierarchy can survive one more game without being forced to answer the real question. Think carefully about what Tibbetts was actually admitting. The younger lineup was so dominant, so clearly and visibly superior, that he had to justify pulling them. Not because the scoreboard was turning against them, not because a trainer flagged something medically, but because leaving them out there any longer would have made the starting lineup question completely impossible to deflect at the next press conference. The excuse about fatigue was not an observation. It was political cover. Many of you were tracking exactly this pattern from the first game of the tournament. You watched Chelsea Gray initiate a slow, stagnant half-court offense for the 3rd time in 3 games, and you watched Caitlin Clark come off the bench and immediately inject pace, spacing, and scoring gravity that the starting unit simply could not replicate. The numbers backed you up every single time. And now, the acting head coach has backed you up too, unintentionally. But on the record, 3 elite athletes in peak international competition condition, competing at the highest level of women's basketball in the world. And the official post-game explanation for why they could not sustain their own dominance is that they got a little bit tired after one stretch. You were not wrong to reject that explanation the moment you heard it. What makes this moment uniquely significant is the specific context surrounding it. This is not a regular season game where lineup politics carry limited consequences. This is an international qualifying tournament broadcast to a global audience, with Team USA's offensive identity and competitive ceiling on full display. Every sponsor watching, every network executive tracking viewership patterns, and every front office analyst studying this footage is seeing the same discrepancy. The starting unit runs a system built around institutional seniority. The second unit runs a system built around Caitlin Clark, and the results are not close. Now let's talk about what happened at that same press conference when the reporter turned the microphone toward Chelsea Gray. Because Gray's response to being asked about Clark and Bueckers' development is where this story stops being about coaching decisions and reveals something far more calculated. Drop your reaction in the comments right now when you heard Chelsea Gray's answer at that podium. Did it read as genuine mentorship, or did something else come through? This community has been sharper than any analyst on this story, and your read on this moment is exactly what the conversation needs. Gray was handed a defining opportunity. A reporter essentially offered her the podium to publicly embrace two of the most globally marketable players in the history of women's basketball and cement her legacy as a veteran leader welcoming the next generation. What she delivered instead was a reference to peanut butter and jelly, noting that Clark and Bueckers had been standing in the wrong spots on the floor. That is not mentorship language. Veterans who are genuinely secure in their standing do not summarize two players' contributions to a tournament-swinging performance by leading with their positional errors. The specific framing, publicly surfacing their mistakes at the exact moment their dominance was peaking, is a precision strike on their credibility, timed perfectly to deflate the momentum of their best performance of the tournament. The fans who watched that press conference in real time recognized it immediately. Gray cannot outperform Clark on the floor in this stage of their careers. The efficiency gap is empirical and documented, so the leverage shifts to the microphone, to the press room, to the narrative framing that shapes how the public perceives the two players. The goal is not to mentor Clark and Bueckers into the starting lineup. The goal is to ensure the public still associates veteran leadership with whoever starts the game, regardless of who actually wins it. And if this caliber of breakdown, going line by line through what these press conferences are actually communicating, is the analysis that keeps you coming back, consider joining this channel as a member. Your support is what makes it possible to go deeper than any mainstream outlet will. Here is the dimension of this story that almost nobody is connecting, because doing so requires holding two simultaneous storylines together at once. While this lineup battle is playing out on the international stage, the WNBA's collective bargaining negotiations are running in parallel and approaching a hard deadline. The veteran player class is demanding a 50% revenue split from ownership. That is a historic and aggressive position, and it rests entirely on one core argument, that the players are the product and the revenue reflects their value. But examine where that revenue actually comes from, the sponsorship deals that expanded after last season, the broadcast agreements that grew, the arena attendance records that shattered across the league. A significant and documented portion of those financial gains traced directly to Caitlin Clark's arrival and the audience she brought with her. And the same veteran class making the 50% argument is simultaneously the group actively occupying the starting lineup ahead of the player most responsible for generating the dollars being negotiated over. That is not a sustainable position. And the people on the other side of that negotiating table know it. Corporate sponsors and television executives are not sentimental about seniority. They are watching tournament footage. They are seeing a player post 17 points and 12 assists off the bench in limited minutes against international competition. And they are running the same math everyone else is running. The asset generating the revenue is not starting the game. The veterans demanding 50% of that revenue are, when ownership slides that final offer across the table, the leverage calculus is going to be brutally clear. You cannot simultaneously demand full credit for revenue you did not generate and expect the entity writing the checks to simply agree. Caitlin Clark keeps delivering regardless. Benched from the starting lineup, publicly characterized as a work in progress by her own teammate, operating under a coaching staff managing institutional politics as carefully as it manages actual basketball. And she still produces a double-double in limited minutes that no starting player in this tournament matched. The suppression has a ceiling. The performance does not. The next video goes deep on what the CBA deadline means for Clark's trajectory heading into the 2026 season, including the scenarios where a collapsed deal reshapes the entire competitive landscape in ways nobody in the mainstream is discussing yet. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you are there the moment it drops. The situation is accelerating, and the next development may be the one that finally makes the starting lineup question impossible to avoid. Stay locked in.